Hey computer, play About Bees podcast.
But you were asking me something then.
You know, I'm trying to change my voice.
Oh, yeah? What's wrong with your voice? I like your voice.
I don't know, but I want to have that raspy.
Oh, okay. Well, here we are again. Are we ready now?
We are ready.
Okay.
Take it away, Ron. Or no, well, let's restart, actually.
No, that's okay. Just got to scratch my nose. Don't put that in. Got to cut that out. Okay. We get ready?
I do want to show you Ron Burgundy eventually. Ron Burgundy?
Yeah?
He's a news anchor.
Yeah? I don't know about Ron Burgundy, the news anchor.
It's a movie, Anchorman.
Oh, okay.
I don't know.
Yeah.
It's kind of a comedy.
What's his name again?
Ron Burgundy.
Ron Burgundy. Yeah. I would take the stage name Ron Gray if I had to.
Ron Gray.
Yeah, if I had to choose. I like gray. Gray is a good in-between color. Okay.
That's
Are we ready? Are we ready?
Happy coincidence, huh? Here in a gray room.
Yeah, here we are in this gray room.
Yeah.
Well, welcome, everybody. We're back again with About Bees, Culture, and Curiosity with Ron Miksha and...
Bidzina Mosiashvili.
And I like Bidzina to say his own name because there's no way that I can do anything but his first name. I did try earlier, and I came out with Moses Mosiashvili.
It's pretty close.
Pretty close.
We'll get it eventually, I think, around by the 100th episode.
Have you thought of changing it?
I thought if I were to ever have a stage name, it would be
Ron Gray.
No. It would be Bid Mosia.
I like that. Bidmosia.
Yeah, just because
Yeah.
people can say the Mo part and Sia is common. Just the Shvili kind of throws everyone
That's
off.
a tough one for us. Yeah. Unless we grew up in Georgia like you did.
Yeah, 35% of the country has that last name
35%.
that ends with Shvili. It might be more, but there's three, and that's the biggest. It just means child.
Yeah.
Yeah, like Robertson.
Yeah. So it's a whole country of children.
Yeah, actually a little bit. Way things
Do you have
are.
any plans on going back? Visit relatives just to see it? Because you left when you were a kid.
It's been 19 years since I haven't gone back.
Wow.
And it'll be 20 in September.
Oh, wow.
Well, almost, yeah.
Yeah. Well, you know, when my grandparents left Europe, on all sides, my grandparents came out of Europe, and one of them never went back. He lived to be 88 years old, and left when he was 17. And so he spent all those years not back in his native country. And another grandfather came out of a country today that's independent called Croatia, and he couldn't go back because as soon as he arrived in North America, World War I broke out, and then it was the Depression. He didn't have any money, and then World War II, and so he couldn't go back then either, and finally. When he retired, I think he was like 66 or 67 years old. He had the money and he had the interest, and he went back for one trip. He was 14 when he left, and these guys leave on their own. Can you imagine today, 14-year-old kids just say, "Hey, bye, folks."
It's wild.
Yeah. And the thing, too, with my grandfather, just to round off the end of this long, tedious story, when he did go back, he said that nothing had changed. The village was the same as he remembered it, maybe a little smaller in his mind because he left as a kid. And one thing that really stood out to him was one of the old houses that he used to hang out at. You would go up these wooden steps. And you had to be careful on the third step because it was slightly broken.
Right, and it was still broken.
It was still broken 50 years later. Yeah, well, I mean, it works, so why replace it?
Well,
hey, yeah.
Just a little. My sister that was born here in Canada, I'm 13 years older than her.
Wow.
She's in Georgia right now with my other sisters. So she's there before me.
Okay. Are they sending you some pictures?
You know what? They are sending lots of pictures to my mom, but
Okay.
I haven't really had the time to look. I
Yeah.
see it on
Yeah.
social media and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
but they are sending lots of.
Oh, it would be great to catch up with seeing what things look like. And you were pretty young when you left, so you probably don't have a lot of memories of what things actually were like or looked like.
Well, not really.
Yeah. But it'd be a great trip. Anyhow, this is supposed to be a bee podcast talking about bees, culture, and curiosity. And today we've got a lot on curiosity because we're going to be talking about...
Do bees hear? Or can bees hear?
Yes, and all about their buzzes and stuff like that. So it's a bee buzz and hearing and buzzing and why they buzz and do they hear themselves buzz or is that just for our own entertainment? So first of all, the question about can bees hear? What you think?
I think they can hear from doing research, but well, even prior, I knew they must have some sort of sensory organ, but I wasn't really sure what it was. But I had a intuition. Sorry, sorry about that. I had intuition that they could hear, but I didn't really know how they could.
Oh, you're way ahead of me because I really thought that they did not hear until just a few years ago. And then some of the scientific research I saw kind of dissuaded me of that. And I used to always hear about these stories that when a bee hive or a colony of bees would swarm in the old days, the whole village would get together with pots and pans. They'd start making all kinds of noise by hitting the pots and pans together or with sticks to make a drumming kind of tinny sound. And that was supposed to get the bees to finally settle down and not fly away when they were swarming. And I thought, that is just one of those ridiculous ideas that certainly can't be true because bees don't have ears. Bees can't hear. So I was surprised, really surprised when I found out. And I used to make fun of people for thinking that they can pound on something and maybe they were right and I was wrong. They based their ideas on hundreds of years of
Wait, so this is a story. Where is this story?
All over Europe, all over.
Where if there was a swarm of bees, the neighborhood would come together with pots and pans.
Yes, and start dinging the stuff together to try to get the bees to settle down.
I've never heard this story, personally.
Okay.
Well, I don't know everything. But.
Maybe I just no, I didn't make it up on the spot. No, it's actually an old tradition, and there are a lot of old traditions we're going to be talking about today, and that's one of them is making these noises to get the bees to settle down.
That's interesting.
You're looking it up right now, aren't you? As we speak, you're doing a quick search.
I'm trying to connect to the Wi-Fi, and it's connecting to my phone's Wi-Fi, and I don't want to use the battery. And
let's avoid that. But anyhow, here we are. Can bees hear? And we know now that they do hear. They can hear. So how do they hear? Where is their ear?
They have multiple ears, right?
Okay.
Or multiple different ear organs, sensory, sound sensors. So they got some at the leg, and then they got. So is that on? So do they have one at every single leg?
Yes. So they've got 6 different organs, but those are quite different from the Johnstone organ that they have in their antennae. And do you know the difference there? And I think you do. You can describe what's going on there.
So just so they have. I can't describe it because okay. Wait, I think I can describe it right now. Just one sec here.
Okay.
Connected to the Wi-Fi.
Oh, you're cheating. You're looking up the answer.
No, I'm not. Oh, my God. Do you want to just describe it a little bit?
I will talk a little bit about that. So what happens is they have a hearing organ in their second joint of their antennae. And like where the antennae folds, So they have these long antennae that stick out, and they can kind of flex them up and down. And right at the joint point, there is a little receptor that picks up sound vibrations through the air. So that's where they can hear tones and sounds that come out of the air through their antennae. They don't have ears stuck to the side of the head. They're using antennae. And then they also have an entirely different structure that's, I think it's called subgeneal organs.
Right.
Is that the right word?
Yes, that is, yes.
And those work by, if they're standing somewhere and like there's a dinosaur walking and it's shaking the ground, then they can feel through their feet this vibration in the joint of their legs. So that's the other way. So it's an entirely different system. It's more based on vibrations that get converted into electromagnetic, nerve pulses that tell them that something is approaching or moving or bouncing. And the other one is to hear things through the air.
So they also have a third receptor. It's called the mechano-receptors. Mechano-receptors? I don't know.
I don't know that one.
This, maybe you could.
No, that's okay. Let's just. Okay, you want me to. Mechano. So like mechanisms, mechano-receptors. It's spelled like mechanics. So it's a mechanical receptor. And what does that do? Where's that located?
So these sensory cells are they're on their body surface. So they're on their body.
Okay.
All over their body, and it can detect air movements and vibrations.
So it's like their exoskeleton picking up things.
Yeah, so in addition to their organs, their entire exoskeleton is
okay. I guess we're kind of like that. I mean, our exoskeleton's on the inside, but we can feel like we're shaken to the bones by a really loud explosion or sound or something.
Right, but we can also detect stuff on our skin as well.
The sound?
No, you're not sound.
Oh, like air and cold and so on. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
But
Yep.
But they use it to detect sound. Okay, that's right. Yeah.
So then we do know that bees have ways, and not just bees. When we talk about that Johnstone organ, it's one of the key differences between six-legged bugs that are insects and that are not insects. So there are some, I can't remember, it's called hemiatrids. There's a whole branch of creatures that look a lot like insects, but they're not insects, and they don't have that receptor in their antennae. So they can't pick up these kind of sounds, but all the insects can. So this would include butterflies.
Yeah,
and various flying bugs, like different sorts. So that's how they hear things through the air. And one experiment that kind of persuaded me when I read about it was some scientists had trained bees to fly towards a food source, and they would play a tone when the bees had to fly towards the right to get to the food, and they would play a different tone when the bees had to fly to the left to get to this little bowl or plate of sugar syrup.
right.
So the bees could be trained to hear that tone and know which way to fly without flying around in circles to try to figure it out or taste it and see if it's there. No, it's not there. It must be on the other side. No, they could just hear the tone and they say, okay, that's the tone that we fly straight ahead and then turn right. So with that knowledge, we knew then that, first of all, obviously the scientists isolated that sound tone so that it couldn't be picked up through their feet or through the air, like through a vibration. It had to be picked up through their ears, in this case, their antennae.
Okay.
And not only does that tell us that they can hear through that antennae, but it also tells us that they can remember and that they can follow instructions.
So that
Okay, I think I'm waiting for you to say something.
Well, that builds off on our last episode. Is that they have consciousness and brains and stuff. So
Yeah.
they can think, they can hear. What else they cannot do?
Yeah, I know. It just gets more and more wild. The more we learn about, the more science tells us about how bees function and think.
Yeah.
It's just incredible. We're just
They
just
make their
kinda
own
like-
wax.
They make their own wax.
Yeah.
Now we've known that for a long time.
Yeah.
And that goes back hundreds of years when people actually saw the little specks of wax on the underside of a bee. And
Yeah, people really get fascinated when they hear that.
Yeah.
Like, oh, they make because you thought they collected that, but it
Right.
would make sense.
Right.
We make our own wax, and
right
Yeah.
we do. I do. I could probably make a candle with what comes out of my ears in a year. But
be a specialty.
yeah, that could be my side gig. Human wax candles.
Sculptures, human.
So if bees can hear, then I know people sometimes go out to the bees and they talk to them. Do you talk to your bees?
I do. I apologize to them.
Why would you have to apologize to your bees?
Every single time I squish them, I say sorry, or sometimes like actually, I've probably sworn them more than I have apologized. There has been I've had very it hurts when they sting.
Okay, I agree with that to a certain extent. I actually like getting stung myself. Like I enjoy the stings. I feel like that's a kind of a healthy kind of thing. But I understand that they can be irritating and that you might want to cuss at them. But
I've also noticed sometimes I've played music on my phone, and I just put it in my beekeeping suit.
Yeah,
and they seem to don't mind that. They don't mind the music.
okay.
playing,
Now
yeah.
here's my question to you. Think about this one.
Yeah. Different songs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're playing music, do you think that it's affecting you and you're more relaxed, you're enjoying the music, and you're not hearing the wild buzzes, and that makes you a calmer, easier going beekeeper?
It might, because it does get pretty intense sometimes.
Yep.
Especially because they're just flying around, right? That's their natural instinct, but to me, it seems like they're attacking me or swarming me or whatever. But they're just flying around.
That's right.
But if I pay attention to the music, that's probably makes me less. Yeah.
Got it. I got it. And I really think that might be why talking to the bees for some people seems to quiet the bees down. It's not because their voice talking to the bees necessarily makes the bees feel, calmer and more relaxed. I think it could be more that it calms the person, the beekeeper. And, one thing you want to be is really relaxed when you're around your bees. You don't want to move around really quickly. I remember Dr. Richard Taylor, one of the great beekeepers of my generation, actually he even goes back before me a ways, and he said that to be a proper good beekeeper, every move you make should be deliberate and slow. So, you don't just move around for just, out of idleness. You have a goal, something in your mind. I need to take that box off. Now, how can I do it the most gentle, slowest way possible? This isn't the kind of advice that you could give to a commercial beekeeper as you're kind of aspiring to be a commercial beekeeper.
Yes and no, because you can, if you get a system going, you can do everything a commercial beekeeper would be doing, but without killing. As you're obviously still some bees are gonna die eventually. You have to hurry, but there are times where you don't have to rush, and but you don't also have to kill the bees either.
Got it.
I mean, sorry, where you do have to rush.
Yes.
And you can do it gently.
Yeah.
You can rush and do it gently.
Yeah, you don't have to be murdering bees while
Yeah.
you're working. You can do what you can to be gentle.
But just to kind of add to the commercial aspect, that some commercial beekeepers will take their bees to pollination fields and just leave them to die, so they don't really.
No, I didn't know that. I don't.
In California, that's what they do.
They take them to die.
Well, they'll take them to the almond farms to pollinate, and then it's a month or 2 months later when the pollination is over. It's time to spray the trees.
Yeah.
And sometimes the beekeepers don't have enough time to get the bees off before they spray, so they just allow the farmer to spray the bees and everything.
Oh, I'm going to object to that story.
Is that not true?
Well, I think it could happen.
Well,
I think it could happen. The beekeeper.
They're old bees or something like that. They're an old colony, but they don't take them back home. It's only for the pollination contract.
I've never heard that before.
Really?
And I seriously doubt that, because the bees are still worth a lot. See, the pollination for almonds happens in January, February, early March, in that time frame. And it doesn't last for more than a few weeks. So the bees have to be put into these huge holding yards where there might be thousands of colonies of bees, and then and preferably in places where they can be accessed and fed and taken care of. But then once the almonds bloom, they will bring their bees into the groves, into the orchards, and set them out. And then they will have to move them in case there's going to be any spraying going on. But
so
yes.
So I did. There's an article here from the Guardian.
Okay, the Guardian.
Yeah, it's like sending bees to war: the deadly truth behind your almond milk obsession.
Okay.
And I have to read the article, but I think it's going to talk about how they don't really take good care of the bees.
Well, we will talk about that another day. Make sure you save that. So the story is that the Guardian, which is a UK publication coming out of London, they tend to sometimes dramatize situations, and I suspect that this could be one of those occasions where the story isn't quite exactly as they're describing it, except in a few very rare cases, which I can't doubt. Sometimes things happen. But it does seem like a beekeeper wouldn't want to see their hives lost.
So this is in the story. It's a beekeeper named Arp, who normally he does this pollination contract for the last 10 years, and then he's been noticing lately that every time he's been sending his bees, they've been coming back. He's been losing them, and this story is then it goes on. But his story is not unique. Commercial beekeepers who send their hives to omelet farms are seeing their bees die in record numbers, and nothing they do seems to stop the decline. A recent survey of commercial beekeepers showed. The beekeepers attribute the high mortality rate to pesticides exposure, disease from parasites, and habitation loss.
Okay. Those are three of the common problems, monoculture being a fourth one. So what you just described are parasites, meaning varroa mites, and the fact that there's habitation loss, and that's taking out wild flowers and trees, which give a diversity of pollen and nectar sources for the bees to keep them healthier. So the bees are moved into almonds where, in some cases, there's almost nothing else for the bees to feed on but almond pollen. So they're stuck there with a single source diet, and the pests have become worse every year. So there are that, but
I don't mean to kind of like keep dragging on, but they're pretty much more than 2/3 of the United States commercial honeybee population will spend February in toxic chemical soup of California's Central Valley, fertilizing almonds one blossom at a time. Pesticides are used for all kinds of crops, but almonds at 35 m 35 million pounds a year is dosed with greater absolute quantities than any other. One of the most widely applied pesticides is the herbicide glyphosate, aka Roundup, which is the staple of large-scale almond growers and has been shown to be lethal to bees as well as cause cancer in humans. And then the maker Bayer-owned Monsanto denies the cancer link when people use Roundup at prescribed dosage.
Okay, so that article's rambling around quite a bit,
Yeah.
bringing in
let's
human
get
cancer and Roundup and so on.
Which is, the commercial beekeepers are...
Okay, but what I want to say is that I don't think beekeepers actually bring their hives into California with the expectation of just leaving them there to die. They bring them back, and they try to nurse them back to health, and they have a lot of things that they can do around that. But I'm not going to deny that the almond acreage is so enormous, and the dependency on bees has put the bees and the beekeepers in a really tough situation. If you want to stay as a beekeeper, you almost have to do that pollination.
Right.
You don't necessarily have to, but a lot of them have built that into their systems. And
not only the bees, but apparently the drought that California experiences a lot frequently is because of the almond farms. It takes unnatural amounts of water to grow these trees.
oh, absolutely, it does. Yeah, it does. I don't remember how many liters of water for each single kernel, each single little nut that you might eat.
Yeah, that's right. Should we search that up?
Let's move on.
Okay.
Let's move on. But my friend here in the photograph, her name was Sue, and she was in California and near the almonds. Yes.
That little thing in the square is not being recorded, right? It's not. Do you see that? It's not on your laptop. That little
It's not on the laptop.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
It's okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Sorry, folks. Bidzina just had an insight. So.
I wanted to bring it up earlier, but we're not recording that.
No, we're not recording that.
I
No.
hope we're not. Okay.
No. But
it's fine. Anyway, it's not a big
Yeah.
deal. It's just a little
yeah.
square.
Okay. So no, we're not recording that. I wanted to talk about Sue for just a few minutes. So she was a person who absolutely loved, adored bees of all sorts, and she was a rescuer of Africanized stock, brought them home, tried to recover them when they were in the wrong place, wrong in the definition of the humans. So if they got into somebody's house or somewhere that they needed to be removed, she'd be one of the ones to go out and remove them. So she talked to her bees. And I found that really enchanting, that she literally believed that you could talk to bees and that they knew, that you were on their side. And that's the way she lived. Unfortunately, I will add that Sue passed away a few years ago at a very young age from cancer. And I think the whole community in Los Angeles really misses her because she was such a spark plug and such an advocate for the bees. But as we're talking about passing away, kind of a sad topic, of course, there's something that I hope people in California did for her bees. And they have kind of this is more of a Western European, Northern European sort of a tradition of telling the bees when someone passes away. And what you're supposed to do is go out to the bees and let them know that their owner, or their beekeeper, their friend, their master, has passed away. And this tradition goes back at least 300 or 400 years. And there are very different kinds of formalities that you're supposed to do. Like whatever you do, you're supposed to rhyme when you knock on the hive. Yeah, so you go knock on the hive, and you go bees, so you get their attention, right? So now they're listening, and then you have to have some little.
This is a true story you're saying, right?
Yeah, this is true.
This is true. Okay,
yeah,
we're not fairy tales right now.
No, I try not to do too many fairy tales, and
but it sounds like it.
No, but this is true that some people do this.
Okay.
I'm not saying that the bees will actually know what they're talking about, but the beekeeper or the friend of the beekeeper or some family member is supposed to go out when the master of the bees has passed away and let the bees know. And it has to be kind of like a rhyming little ditty, like I can't even think of anything right now, but like on this day, George has passed away. And then it goes on, and just kind of tell the bees that there will be a new master, and that we want you to stay and treat the new master well. And if you don't do that, then the bees swarm, or they die, or they don't make any honey that year. There are a lot of stories about people who claim that by not telling the bees, they lost a child, that somebody in the family became chronically ill, that the bees all died within a few weeks after the master had died. So there are reasons to do this. And I just want to add here that in this photograph, that if you're watching this and not listening to us as a podcast, we have an image up of a gentleman seated, and you can't really see his beehives, but he's there talking to the bees. And also we have an image of a beehive, and the beehive is draped in a black sash. Now, this is a photograph taken by a Mr. John Chappell, who is the 79-year-old beekeeper or 80-year-old beekeeper for the royalty in England. And when Queen Elizabeth passed away, he went out to the bees and he performed this ritual. And he told them all that the Queen had passed away and that there would be a new master, that would be King Charles III. And he draped these black sashes over the hives and put the bees into mourning over the death of the Queen of England. So this is...
Right. The Daily Mail made an article about it. Exclusive. Royal beekeeper has informed the Queen's bees that Queen has died and King Charles is their new boss, and a bizarre tradition dating back centuries.
Okay,
That's
yeah.
a very mouthful.
Yeah, so you were thinking that I made all of this up, and
I did.
I wish I were that creative.
Well, no, earlier when you said you went on about the story in Europe, and then and then I see the article, and I'm like, okay, well, there's something about it.
I usually my stories are usually true, but the details will sometimes wonder. But that's only because of my memory.
Well, facts only matter on paper.
Oh, I think facts always matter, but I try to be factual here. But anyhow, that's the story of telling the bees, and it's the assumption that bees can hear you.
Should we go into that article a little bit?
If you want to, why not?
Okay.
Tell me what it says.
So the royal beekeeper, in an arcane tradition thought to date back centuries, has informed the hives kept in the grounds of Buckingham Palace, and Clarence House of the Queen, and the Clarence House of the Queen's death. Is that a house?
I have no idea.
I guess there's a house that's called the Queen's death. And then,
okay.
And the bees have also been told in hushed tones that their new master is now King Charles III. The official palace beekeeper, John Chappell, 79, told Mail Online how he traveled to Buckingham Palace and Clarence House on Friday following news of the Queen's death to carry out the superstitious ritual. He placed the black ribbons tied into bows on the hive, home to tens of thousands of bees, before informing them that their mistress had died. Or is that mistress?
Mistress, yeah.
Had died,
ma'am.
And that the new master would be in charge from now. He then urged the bees to be good onto their new master, and himself once famed for talking to plants, King Charles.
Mm-hmm.
He's been known to talk to plants.
Well, yeah, they probably can hear as well as the bees.
And we're going to talk about King Charles eventually. He's also a beekeeper, right?
Oh yeah,
yeah.
At least he's put on the veil. He's gotten stung. He's done the thing.
So the strange ritual is underpinned by an old superstition that not to tell them of change of owner would lead the bees that not producing honey, leaving the hive, or even dying, which you mentioned earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking from the Buckingham Palace Gardens, Mr. Chappell told Mail Online, I'm at the hives now, and it is traditional when someone dies that you go to the hives and say a little prayer and put a black ribbon on the hive. I drape the hives with a black ribbon with a bow. The person who has died is the master or the mistress of the hive, someone important in the family who dies, and you don't get any more important than the queen, do you? That's what he said.
No, I guess.
I should say that in a British accent.
Oh, no, no, that's okay.
Should
That's
I
okay. Yeah, go ahead if you want to. You have a British accent up your sleeve?
All right. I drape the hives with black ribbon with a bow. The person who has died is the master or the mistress of the hives. No, it's not very good.
No, that was a good go at it. And you know, England's a very, very large place. You could have been from, you know, the Highlands or from maybe the seaside somewhere, and that's maybe how they talk in that location. So I can't disagree with that.
So this is what he said. So you knock on each hive and say, the mistress is dead, but don't you go. Your master will be good master to you.
Okay, and that kind of rhymes.
Like you were saying earlier.
Yeah, it's supposed to rhyme anyway. There's a poem too. I don't remember it, but I think it was by I'm going to get his name wrong. A very famous American poet. Is it John Greenleaf Whitaker? John Greenleaf. Greenleaf is his middle name, Green. Why would I remember a guy's middle name and not his first or last name?
Whittier?
Whittier, yeah. So he wrote a poem called Telling the Bees. And
do you want to read it? I have it pulled up right here. It's really long.
No, I don't want anything that's going to, you know, people get enough poetry in their everyday life. I think they could probably do without too much more here. But anyhow, that's Telling the Bees, and it's under the assumption that the bees can hear what we're telling them. So we're going to move on from that topic or that idea and ask ourselves then, okay, so bees can hear, and they also can buzz. So how do bees buzz? Like what's going on when a bee buzzes? How do they buzz?
I thought it was their wings flapping or something. Well, just them vibrating.
Yeah, and I think that's a good first guess, and that's what most people would say.
Right.
And I think it contributes, like the fluttering does contribute to the sound that we hear when the bees go by. But actually, a lot of the sound is created by the muscles in their back, kind of going in and going out, in and out, like flexing their muscles makes a clicking sound, makes the sound of the bees. And that's a good part of the buzz itself. And in a normal, good, happy, contented beehive, as they buzz, they create a tone. In a happy hive, it's around 261 hertz. I mean, it could be a little higher or lower. Now, that's a frequency. When I say hertz, that's a frequency. That's a number of vibrations that are made, that we hear, that float through the air. That's 261 vibrations per second. So if I go click, 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 like that might be the equivalent of maybe 100 vibrations, you know, and they're going so fast that it makes that bzzz. That actually, I'm going to play a little bit of this, and what I want to listen for is the sound that the bees are making. And first of all, I recorded the sound of bees in my backyard. And then I recorded a C note on my piano, our piano at home. And if this works, we're going to hear something here. And now it's a C tone. Let me play that one more time. I think the sound actually was kind of going in and out, maybe it'd be more smooth the second time. Let's just see what happens here. And now we're at 261 hertz. It kind of fades into the sound of a happy hive is this 261 hertz. which happens to be the middle C note on a piano. Now, I found that to be really wild when I first learned this a few years ago, that, hitting a middle C is the tone that the bees usually make when everything is good in the beehive. If the bees are a little more irritated, it's a higher tone, and if there's something wrong, it might be a lower tone, I don't know. But the 261 hertz, and I had this idea all by myself, I'll take full credit for this idea, that humans in the Western Europeans, we have a tonal system which is constructed by humans, like it's man-made. We have a certain number of notes in an octave, and we divide it up into different sounds and pitches, and we center it on middle C, which is 261 hertz, and maybe we pick that idea up off the bees. So you hear the bees, bzzz, and then you go ahead and mimic that sound, and you say, well, that's a kind of like mid-tone. So I thought, I should write a paper on this or something, but then I discovered that there was a guy 400 years before me who had the same idea. So he also thought that by listening to the beehive, that there was a tone that is probably the basis of Western music, that it's the tone of the happy hive, and that's middle C. And this guy, Charles Butler, a butler that brings you your tray of hot tea for the beekeeper who was just out there saying goodbye informing the bees. Anyhow, this Charles Butler lived around the year 1600, so just over 400 years ago. He came up with this idea. It was a really amazing guy, and I think Bidzina, we're going to do a whole story on him sometime, because he was absolutely amazing. He was a minister. He was involved in politics a little bit. He wrote several books, including a book on music. He wrote songs for his church, but he also was the first person to have published a book which said that the biggest bee in the beehive is not a male, as Aristotle had claimed 2,000 years earlier, but was a female. It was the queen, not the king. So he figured it out. He was the one who realized it was the queen laying the eggs, and it must be a female. Anyhow, he recorded, and he, with a really great ear, he could hear the sounds, and he recorded these notes from the beehive. And he thought also that the sound that the bees make has influenced our culture so strongly that we center our music around it. Now, that's just his idea. And it was my idea 400 years later. I'm a little slow on the uptake, but that's the story.
Butler, his first name Charles Butler. He's a saint now. Did they give him sainthood?
Oh, I don't know that.
But there's this really pretty picture that you have him up in those church murals.
Yeah,
that's there's bees around him. And there's hexagons.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think that's very cool.
That's very cool. I don't think he's a saint, for the biggest reason being that he wasn't Catholic.
Oh, okay.
So unless the Anglican Church creates saints, and they should, because he'd be the first one.
Right.
Yeah. Anyhow, that's part of the story then. So the bees make a sound, and if they make a sound, and we hear it, and we base our music on it, which may or may not be true. I mean, this is kind of a far-fetched idea, but it's an idea that's come up a few times in history. With all that going on, then do you think bees can hear that buzz, and does that signal things back and forth to them?
So they can understand few things, like that bee dance that they do. So they kind of understand math a little bit, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's right. So they understand math a little bit. There's some math going on, right?
Mm-hmm.
And music is math.
Yeah. Well, how do you see that? Like, I kind of agree with you, but how do you see it?
So the Pythagoras is often credited for discovering the mathematical relationship between musical notes, And he believed that the universe was governed by a numerical harmony, and that musical intervals could be expressed as symbol ratios of a whole number. This idea, known as music of the spheres, suggested that the fundamental connection between music and the natural world. So there's some sort of connection with, not connection, but musical notes carry information.
Right.
Like, for example, birds, if they use that to communicate.
Yes, they certainly do.
They play musical hums. Well, to us it sounds musical hums, but what they're doing is just a universal harmony.
Yeah. Well, you bring up the birds.
I'm kind of going all over the place.
No, this is okay. This is okay because you brought up the birds.
But there's some sort of math behind music.
Well, yeah, for Pythagoras, I think, if I remember correctly, and it's been a long time, but if you had tuned a guitar so that if you just pluck the note to be tuned as the note C, and then you take the length of that string and go exactly halfway and put your finger down and hit it again, you'll still have a C, but it will be an octave higher. If I'm correct, I might be totally wrong, but I kind of remember learning it that way.
But yeah, it's pretty much a transmission, and we're kind of doing music with our mouth right now, like when we're speaking languages. It's not really called music, but to a creature that doesn't really understand what we're saying, I bet there's some sort of rhythm to it.
I hadn't thought of that, but I hadn't thought of that. And in fact, I had an argument with our dog at home just before I came over here, and and the dog was barking, and I told him just to shut up, and he might have been trying to tell me something, but it was just barking to my ears. And when I told him to shut up, he probably by now he understands the word "shut up." But
well, I had a similar situation just before I was coming, and I was looking for my tripod, and I realized that I had left it in the other vehicle. But my dog wanted to go outside, and it was doing its crying and wants to go outside. But then it heard me getting, I was looking for this tripod, and I kind of like, oh, where is it? And I was a little bit frustrated, and when it stopped. Crying after it heard me being frustrated.
Oh.
Yeah. It's like, maybe I should leave him alone.
Yeah, maybe he thought you were crying too.
Maybe he thought I was getting mad at them. But they definitely understand tones.
No,
like there's music, like it carries information. Yeah.
Yeah.
So bees must be picking up on that. Must be what they really pick up on it.
Well, that's what some scientists are telling us. And like with the waggle dance, the bees, as they're moving along and around, they make a buzz sound as they're dancing. And because it's dark inside the hive, and it would be hard for all the bees to know where they are and what they're doing. So the bee that's advertising a food source, who's recruiting foragers to go out and work, has to describe the distance, location, and so on. And part of the story that they tell is used by making a buzz sound. Now, I don't know if we mentioned this earlier, but when a bee makes a buzz sound, they can actually disjoint their wings from their muscles. So that sound then is not associated with flying or with flapping the wings, because it's inside the hive, and yet it makes that sound. And of course, the queen also has a particular tone, especially new young queens who are looking for a fight. They will put out that bzz, 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 kind of a high-pitched sound that attracts the other queens and says, "We're ready for a fight. Let's go rumble." Early in their lives.
Really? The queens will do that?
Yes. We call it piping. So there are other occasions when queens will do a piping sound, but one of them is if they're stressed, if they're ready for battle, if they are looking for their competition, then they will make that sound. But the bees buzzing, talking to each other, is just one of the reasons that they might make a buzz or do a buzzing sound. And so they do this waggle talking when they're waggle dancing and they're talking at the same time. But there's something else that's really important among bees, and I think it's worth 5 minutes of our time at least here, and we won't do justice to it in 5 minutes, but that's buzz pollination. So, yeah, Bidzina.
I wanted to kind of talk about a little bit more about the waggle dance.
Oh, yeah.
So I read somewhere where the kind of bees get depressed.
Okay.
And so let's say if there's a scout bee and they go out enough times and they come back with no information or no resources, they go out searching and they can't find anything. Eventually, these scout bees get depressed and they go hang out in the area where generally another bee would come back and do the waggle dance. And they see the waggle dance and they get excited and follow the bee, and then they get resources again. But there was an article that I was reading. I was trying to find it now, but I can't. But they were saying how it's almost kind of form of depression for the bee, where this bee they're not successful enough, and when they come back to the hive with resources, the other bees dance with them or they buzz with them in that waggle dance.
Mm-hmm.
So that excites them, and if they don't get that love, that social love from a social hive, they get depressed, and then they wait for another bee to eventually come back with information, and that it's almost like they're waiting for a musical, or they're like watching a TV show, and they're home just moping around.
I could see.
I don't know. It was just like a weird.
See that. That's an interesting idea. I've never heard of it before, but that doesn't mean that it's not out there.
They're always trying to anthropomorphize, bees and
make them,
which is really we shouldn't be doing.
Well, I don't know, because for a long time for probably the last 30 or 40 years, we made a very conscious effort not to anthropomorphize we tried not to put our version of how life works through the eyes of another creature.
Right.
But now we're starting to realize that maybe it's legitimate, that we are also creatures. And as it might be one of the reasons why we neglected to realize that bees could probably feel pain, that bees might have a conscience. They might be happy or unhappy or depressed when nobody wants to dance with them. I can sure understand that one.
Right.
So maybe this is what we should be doing is putting, like if I were a bee, how would I feel about this? And scientifically, we've tried to avoid that for years and years. Right. And I guess scientifically, it's the right thing to do. You want to be objective and not subjective. But maybe in terms of taking care of stewardship of our
it would be a
environment,
better way to look at it.
I think so.
Right.
I think so. So the fact that they could get depressed when somebody's not dancing with them, then I don't know, who am I to say?
Yeah, like they don't get the love from the hive, and they don't feel
Yeah.
But that's probably stretching it. But who knows? They could be getting depressed too, because sometimes you'll come across a beehive where they're like, something's just off.
Oh, yeah. We talked about that with Tolstoy,
right.
War and Peace. And
but like
the whole hive was off.
Right. Yeah.
They'd kind of given up their will to fight.
Yeah, a little bit. Sometimes they do that,
Yeah. Oh, there's so much we don't know about the insect world. And one of those things is just the diversity of experiences that all these different types of bugs could have.
Is there such thing as an insect sanctuary?
I don't know for sure. I think inadvertently there are.
They're just, we don't even think about it.
Yeah.
But like just like land set aside for all sorts of bugs that are kind of left behind by
Mm,
previous owner.
We should try to find out.
Be kind of cool to have just like.
Yeah, yeah.
And there's a termite mound right there.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know,
I
but
think
Alberta's probably not the best place for.
not for termites.
Not for insects.
Well, maybe we are by setting aside any national park or any area for.
Right, there's a lot of land.
There's a lot of land that doesn't get torn up and used or.
For the native insects.
Mm-hmm,
Yeah, the native. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. And anyhow, I kind of want to talk a little bit here about buzz pollination, and that's something really different. So the buzzing sound we've already sort of indicated is a way of communicating among bees. So they buzz to do that. And I don't know how you feel about this one, but predator warning, like I think hearing the buzzing sound makes a lot of predators back off.
Yeah.
Human predators, that's for sure.
Well, those Asian honeybees. Have you seen them do the flash?
Oh
You know,
yeah, when they yeah.
And then they'll also do the.
Yeah, go ahead and describe that flash.
Maybe I could find a video here, without getting
Okay.
copyrighted. But there's these wild honeybees that live in the forest, and then they do this flashing here.
Okay.
So here's a video.
Okay.
That's not
so-
buzz pollination, but they'll in that they're probably buzzing in that, aren't they?
I don't know. I don't know how quiet they are or how much noise that makes. That's a really good question. I don't know. That's something else we need to know. We need to know these things.
I could actually turn up the volume.
When under attack, they do this synchronized flick
No,
of their abdomen,
no sound.
creating
Well-
those astonishing waves. It really does make them appear as one.
No, there's nothing new going on there as far as
they're
the
just
sound
doing
is
the
concerned.
regular buzzing.
Yeah. So all their buzzing is happening as would normally happen. Buzzing by wiggling those thorax muscles which have been decoupled from their wings, so they don't fly away while they're making that sound. But anyhow, I wonder sometimes if the buzz of a bee colony that is stationary and like this dorsata that you just showed that we're talking about, I wonder if that could be kind of like the sound of a rattlesnake. It doesn't necessarily
right.
mean it wants to bite or jump out and stick its fangs in you, but it wants you to know that they are nearby. So
Right.
don't step on me, don't bother me. And that might be what's going on with the beehive too. Like we'll make enough noise, people will know where we are, they're kind of walk around us, not break up our nest by mistake.
Right. It's a warning. It's
Yeah.
a warning than anything.
Yeah. I kind of think so. But I do want to kind of wrap up. We've got to end this thing in the next few minutes, and something that's associated with buzzing that's really important is buzz pollination. So what that is that some of the bigger bees, like bumblebees and carpenter bees, will grab a hold of a flower. And the flower is, it has pollen, but the pollen is deep down inside of a very tiny slit. And it's hard for the pollen to come out unless you shake the flower.
Right.
So the bee will grab hold of, and this takes a bigger bee with more weight so they can shake. Like a little tiny bee isn't going to shake the flower, but a big bumblebee or a big carpenter bee could do that. So they grab a hold and they start shaking. And so again, they decouple their wings and they use their wing muscles on their thorax to make a big vibration.
Right.
And that vibration will shake out the pollen. Okay. Do you know more?
No, I don't. I didn't know this. I thought it was like a byproduct that they collect the pollen. I thought they were just going for the nectar. I didn't know they were going for the pollen too.
Right. They are going, in some cases, exclusively for
Yeah.
the pollen.
Right.
Because
Sometimes there's no nectar.
that's right, exactly.
Right.
Like tomatoes, I don't think give off any nectar.
They don't. No pollen either. Well,
pollen, yes.
For the bees, I don't think the bees.
Well, this is where you need to be able
Native.
to do the buzz pollinating.
Buzz pollen.
So honeybees never work tomatoes
Right.
because first of all, I don't think there's any nectar there to attract the bees, but also the honeybee cannot do the buzz pollination.
Yeah.
Which is why you need bumblebees in your backyard or somewhere nearby so they can come into your tomatoes in your backyard garden and give those tomato flowers a big shake so that you actually get tomatoes to grow. Without
That's
bumblebees,
good to know.
yeah, you need them. And honeybees won't do the job. The honeybees are not good at pollinating tomatoes and quite a number of other. I think there are like 15,000 species of plants that have flowers that need to be buzz pollinated. So it's not a trivial thing. There's a wide variety,
I want to start keeping bumblebees.
Oh yeah. So
I don't really know what that entails, but
it could be a lot of fun. It's kind of hit and miss.
yeah.
And I think we ought to go into a whole story episode on how to keep or why would you want to keep bumblebees. But basically, they have a lot different style of a life cycle than honeybees.
Right.
So in the fall, the nests will allow a certain number of females to fly out, get mated, and not come back. Instead, they find a place to hibernate for the winter. And then the next spring, they start a brand new nest. They never keep the same nest more than 1 year.
That makes sense.
Yeah, so the problem there with keeping bumblebees for a long time, like you can't really keep them for a long time, what you can do is put up a lot of houses for them to land in and make their nests inside of.
Sorry, when I say that makes sense, is I've heard others have asked me, they're like, oh, I've had bumblebee houses in my backyard and they worked and now they don't work. So that makes sense. That
Right.
Okay,
Right, it's
so
hit and miss. It's hit and miss. It's some years we have a lot more mated female queen bumblebees in the springtime looking for nests, and other years they just didn't winter very well.
Yeah.
So they're very few. And some years there might be a lot of nests for them to choose from, just different places that they find. Hey, this will make a nice spot to build my nest, and they will ignore the box you put up.
Right.
What we have found in a number of studies, including one that I did, about 20 to 25% of boxes that you, Bidzina, might put up in your backyard in order to attract bumblebees to stay there, only about 20 to 25% of those boxes will be occupied on average.
You got to at least put 4.
Well, and they might all be empty or they might all be full, because every year is a little bit different.
Right.
But on average, over the years, if you put up one nest, it might be 3, 4, 5, 6 years before you actually get somebody to land there. And if you put up 2 nests, maybe not side by side, but in different parts of your backyard, with different conditions, different amount of light, different airflow, and so on. So you have, because 1 year might be a hotter year or a wetter year, and just different attractions for the bumblebees, you're giving them more opportunities, you might increase your odds.
That's and there's so many of them. There's 380 of native bees.
Yeah, 380 more or less native species of bees in Alberta.
Yeah, just in Alberta.
Just in
20,000 worldwide, I think.
Yeah, about 20,000 species of bees. Now that includes the dorsata big bee that you were showing a little earlier. It includes several dozens of bumblebees of different sorts. It includes mason bees and leafcutter bees. It's just all the bees. So, bees that are exclusive to the tropics, that are stingless, honey-producing bees. There are just so many different kinds.
That's kind of what those articles refer to. If bees go extinct, then we don't. Kind of going back to our other episodes. Is if bees go extinct, humans. If all bees go extinct, then we're in trouble.
That's what Einstein says.
Well, that's what they were saying about. But I think if let's say if 20,000 species of something goes extinct, we have something bigger on our hands.
That's right. That's exactly right. And of course, Einstein never said what we just repeated. But you're absolutely right. And that's the way I look at it. Is there's some big catastrophe that got rid of all these 20,000 species of bees, then there's no way humans are going to live through that catastrophe.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. because we're not nearly as adaptable. And
They've been around for a lot longer.
yes, they have been.
Yeah.
Much longer.
Going
much
to little
longer.
crevices.
Mhm.
Usually crevices, that's those underground shelters is what helps with the catastrophes.
Yeah, yeah,
And
that's right.
All the
That's right.
creatures that were able to go underground.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I think if we have a nuclear Armageddon or burn up the planet, then the people who will survive will be these tubes of sacs of bacteria that live.
There's a really
underneath
great
the
show
ocean.
on Prime just that got released.
Oh, yeah?
Fallout, and it's
Okay.
based on so it's set in 1950.
Yeah.
And there's a nuclear holocaust, and then it's like 200 years later now.
Okay.
And the people are coming out of the vaults.
Oh.
The survivors.
Yeah.
But the nuclear holocaust didn't kill everyone. Some are radiated, and but it's based on a game. But it's a very interesting show. You might be.
Yeah.
But speaking
yeah.
about the vault, Switzerland, other countries have this capabilities too, but just Switzerland kind of comes to the top of my mind. They have enough shelters in their mountains, underground shelters, where they could withstand a nuclear holocaust for their entire population.
Wow.
Which is not a lot of people, but for their entire population, they can house them.
One more reason to become Swiss.
Yeah, and they also have the ability, just kind of throwing facts, they have the ability with the click of, well, they have to probably go through some procedures, but they can click a button and explode every single highway that comes into Switzerland from every other European country.
Wow.
All the major bridges that passes that connect, they blow it all up.
But then how would the rest of the world get their chocolate?
I don't know.
They have to think this out before they do it.
They haven't thought about it.
Yeah.
They really, I don't think they have. They're just kind of, let's see what happens.
Well,
It's an emergency. Or something.
they have tried to be neutral and independent for a long time.
Sure.
So I guess that's just part of the game. If you're going to be, an isolated mountain country,
If you-
in some distant future.
If you call financing both sides of the war
Oh, well.
neutral, then that is actually that is neutral. That
that's
you would
neutral.
you would
Yeah.
call that neutral.
Yeah, unfortunately, neutrality isn't always the thing we strive for.
Right.
Sometimes we do have to take a stand, but nothing bad to say about Switzerland or the Swiss people.
But more countries should strive to be like Switzerland. I wish Georgia was more like Switzerland.
Yeah, how's that?
Well, it's just kind of the neutral stance, and it has a lot of powerful neighbors that it could, instead of having conflict with, they could just economically trade with and get along with. But
They must have done that, otherwise they wouldn't still be there.
they're doing that, but there's just so much ancient conflict
Yeah.
that always gets brought up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's a problem, but I think they are the country of Georgia and several others around the world, including Switzerland, have played off of the ability to trade with other countries and
Right.
stay
Neutral.
independent. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So we've covered a lot today. Again, this has been a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Talking about bees and culture and curiosities that are associated. And this time, just thinking about how the bees make their buzz sound, the fact that they can hear, which a few years ago became news to me, and having grown up thinking that they didn't hear me talking to them or cussing at them, and you kind of caught on to that before I did.
Well, I just assume that any living thing can hear. I'm just even plants. Like I'm kind of I have this weird theory about plants, how they're our masters.
You and King Charles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they've been around a lot longer than us, and they will be around a lot longer than us, and they benefit from our consumption. The more we consume, the more mammals procreate, the more the plants benefit. The more the warmer the earth gets and more carbon dioxide gets released.
Right. I heard politicians in the States say it was a Chinese plot, but here it turns out to be it's all the plants in the world that are plotting against the humans.
I don't think it's a plot against the humans. I just think, well, we can go on, and this is, but we came out of an ice age. About 150 in the 1800s, the world temperature was -1. So we were in a technical ice age worldwide just about 200 years ago. And
no, I don't think so.
I think so. And then
I don't think so.
And then the reason why we've seen so much economic development is because of the warming. There's different pathways
Yes.
have opened up. Just imagine it like a gas, right? A gas when it's frozen, the particles they're in a frozen state. They're compact. They don't move around. As it becomes warmer and it gets released, it's more free and it moves more freely. So that's kind of society. The warmer, it's just kind of this basic natural.
Yeah, but if it gets too hot, it turns into plasma and dissolves the universe.
That's right, but
so there's got to be a happy grounds here.
There has to be a happy ground, but we don't know. Like they're saying, oh, if we go above 2 degrees, we're toast.
We are.
Yeah. Well, that's
what you don't think so. Maybe you don't think so. I don't know.
I don't know. I'm not a scientist. I'm a beekeeper. This is a beekeeping podcast.
Yeah, I know, but the climate is important to beekeepers and beekeeping, and I think the general ecology is changing a lot.
It is. That's true.
Yeah.
No, it is rapidly changing. I'm just saying, maybe the plants want it to rapidly change.
They probably do. I wonder, like if we could learn to talk to them.
Yeah, right.
Maybe we can convince them that, okay, we've made some mistakes in the past, so maybe you guys can like spread out more and then absorb more CO2 and reflect. No, we want white-colored plants to spread out because white reflects sunlight back into space.
Right.
So if we could cooperate with the plants. Anyway, you've been listening to About Bees, Culture and Curiosity with Bidzina and Ron, and it's been great to be covering these topics. And not sure what we're doing next time, but one of these episodes we are probably going to just kind of solve all the world's problems. And I was thinking maybe even the next one, what we could do is you and I, Bidzina and I, could look for some recent publications, articles, stories, and just take our time and kind of discuss them and see what's in it for beekeepers, for people who love ecology, people who love all kinds of insects, and people who want to have a cleaner, safer, better, cooler world. Then maybe we can just talk about those next time.
I think that's a really good idea.
All
We're
right.
going to have to cut this episode short. We're running a little short on time, but yeah, come back next week for some world news.
World news.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.